Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, it is I am the one and only Ray the Flying Squirrel here, and I am back for the likes of the Maxi Toys videos once again. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back for some more Let's Play of Castlevania Bloodlines, aka Castlevania A New Generation in the European version, aka Vampire Killer for the Japanese version for the likes of the Sega Mega Drive / Sega Genesis. So, last time we have beaten the game as John Morris, and it was quite lengthy, all things considered, but regardless of anything else though, is about the fact that we did somehow manage able to, well, complete the entire thing as John Morris. So now, today for this video is about the fact that we'll be able to play the game again, except this time we are not going to be playing as Eric Lecarde. So because of that, although obviously we're going to go through the exactly same stages as before, however, there are certain paths that we can now able to actually access to, because normally John Morris cannot be able to actually go into any other like alternative pathways you can able to go into. So yeah, let's just go and get started with the forms of the second playthrough of Castlevania Bloodlines, except this time we're now going to be playing as Eric Lecarde. So basically, as you can see, it's about the fact that unlike John Morris, that he does have himself a different weapon, which as a result, we've now got ourselves an Alucard spear. So because of that, yeah, it comes from the forms of Alucard himself. So because of that, yeah, as a result, it behaves kind of like the forms of how it does it for the whip, for the likes of John Morris, or to be more specifically, the Vampire Killer. So, but even then though, although regardless of everything else though, is about the fact that you can only aim for like 4 different directions as far as I'm concerned, whenever I did manage able to test this out. Also, taking notes from Super Mario Bros. 2 USA is that if you crouch and if you manage to see your character starts flashing, this means you can able to perform a super jump ability, which as a result, it allows you to able to actually reach certain places that John Morris cannot. So yeah, it's a pretty nifty ability, and as a result, it does kind of remind me like a similar ability as you learned from the likes of Super Mario Bros. 2 USA. Although the noticeable differences there is that you can able to actually hit enemies with it. So at least that's actually super helpful and everything. So yeah, but I digress. I think that's as far as I can say about the forms of Eric Lecarde, if I have to be quite frank here. I mean, sure, he does have a different weapon and all that stuff, and also, depending on what sub-weapons you're going to be using, I believe they behave exactly the same, although there's a noticeable difference about the forms of John Morris compared to the forms of how it does it for Eric Lecarde, is that potentially speaking now, I think to me though, if you do manage able to equip the level 4 for the sake of the forms of the actual spear upgrade, it does this very devastating amount of damage if you try to take down certain enemies or even certain bosses. So because of that, yeah, you probably already know what to expect at this point, so but even then. So yeah, today's date of course here is the 28th of October today, in some cases in 2023 today. Naturally speaking though, we've only just got about 3 more days to go until Halloween is about to start. So because of that, now I'm pretty sure that it's been confirmed that Luigi definitely needs to go back onto Luigi's Mansion until tomorrow, all the way up to Halloween during that time, especially concerning for the fact that that'll be a perfect opportunity that we can able to finish up the forms of, well, potentially speaking, Luigi's Mansion during the Halloween day. So I'm not exactly sure of what's going to happen for the sake of the forms of next year in 2024, because like we've already established earlier, it's about the fact that we can probably tackle for some more Castlevania stuff until next year, and I'm not exactly sure what specific game we can able to actually tackle through around the same time as when Halloween is about to start next year, but it might be a bit too early to say it for this point right now, because obviously we're still in 2023 after all, so everything else will be pretty much expected. So also, something's worth noting for, we've only just got about 20 more days to go until Super Mario RPG Remake for the Nintendo Switch should be releasing, and in addition to that, I think we've only got about 6 more days to go until WarioWare Move It is about to be releasing. So yeah, I'm pretty pumped about the forms of how the fact that I cannot wait to able to play both of those games on the Nintendo Switch, of course, so everything else will be come to expect when it comes to me more specifically buying the last few games, just before Christmas or something like that. So, but either way though, that's as far as I can usually say about that, I guess. Oh, and another thing I want to classify for something for this matter though, is that obviously we just got back from the likes of the forms of the fact that yes, we did somehow manage able to enjoy The Lion King on the theater, and that was actually a nice little watch. Although originally we were expecting to able to try to save it up for the likes of the films of next year, for 2024, for celebrating the original film's 30th anniversary, but it's just about the fact that Sonic or Silver just seriously cannot wait, although potentially speaking despite the fact that we've already seen it recently, and let me tell you, it is a really great showing, especially concerning for the fact that how unique it was. Although I will say is that the theater version of The Lion King is definitely a lot better than the forms of how it does on this very lackluster live-action counterparts to me though, just because, well, at the very least, it's well animated for the sake of the forms of the theater version, because while compared to the forms of how it does on the live-action movie, it just doesn't look right. So because of that, that's just from my honest opinion anyway. Especially I've noticed from the start though is that a lot of people got really overly mad about the forms of the live action adaptation of the forms of The Lion King as a result. So, oh yeah, something worth noting for is about the fact that yes, I did look up on certain boss names by the way. So as a result, this guy's name was Armor Battler. So yeah, kind of weird of able to actually name this particular guy right here. Although, relatively speaking though, assuming of course if you do manage to able to utilize the enhanced sub-weapon, then you should be able to actually take him down, no problem. So, oh, and something's worth noting for is about the fact that you already know about for the fact that Mario Party 3 has finally get its release on the Nintendo Switch Online expansion pack. I've noticed something right from the get-go though, whenever I did manage to look upon certain gameplay footage recently for the likes of Mario Party 3 version on the Nintendo Switch Online expansion pack. Unfortunately though, one of those particular sprites has been gone missing, much like the forms of how it does it on the Virtual Console Wii re-release of Mario Party 2. Like, if you managed able to look on the map, likely also where the characters are, likely also what if you managed able to see the entire map view, basically though certain sprites have been disappeared. So because of that, normally on the original cartridge version, you do see the actual the graphical sprite usually flashes from red to yellow for the likes of, I would say like a hexagon shape like. So, for whatever reason, on the forms of the NSO expansion pack version, much like the forms of how it does on the Nintendo Wii version of Mario Party 2 Virtual Console re-release, basically the actual sprite has been missing. So because of that, unlike in Mario Party 1 and Mario Party 2, does manage able to have themselves the actual little sprite shown up for the sake of the forms if you ever were able to actually see the entire view map. Likely also whenever you do manage to able to highlight certain characters on screen. So, seems kind of weird to me though, but regardless of such though, it plays really well, from what I've heard anyway, and thankfully though, there is no graphical issues, unlike the forms of how it does it on certain emulators for Mario Party 3. Likely also for the actual cardboard cutouts for certain objects, likely also for clouds, flowers, you name the rest. Now I'm sure it will make it a lot more nicer this time around with all this clear imagery. So because of that, and also as I said before, you can now finally get a chance to play Mario Party 3 in online play. So yeah, everything else will be pretty much accounted for. So it's pretty cool to me though that so far we actually got 5, count them, 5 Mario Party games that you can play online with. Likely also Super Mario Party, despite the fact that you can only access to online play with friends. And also, meanwhile, we have Mario Party Superstars, and on top of that, Mario Party 1, Mario Party 2, and of course, Mario Party 3. So, as a result, we've now got 5 Mario Party games able to play online with. Well, usually on the Nintendo Switch anyway. So because of that, I mean, what's next then? Mario Party 4, 5, 6, or 7? Oh, wait a minute, they'll save up for the next console, I believe so. So because of that, or potentially speaking though, if they decide to announce yet another Mario Party game, or should I say, the last Mario Party game to be released on the Switch before they move on to the next one, well, presumably speaking on the next generation of consoles for Nintendo, as far as I'm concerned. Well, then again though, it's difficult to tell, mainly because about the fact that the Nintendo Direct stuff is pretty much done for the likes of 2023, of course. But I must say, the 2023 Nintendo Direct selection is actually really good. Despite with this very slow start, I get it because of the forms of trying to able to focus on not only Pikmin 4, but also with The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. So because of that, well, I can possibly understand why. So because of that, and yeah, relatively speaking, I was about the fact that, well, I'm very happy about the forms of the game selections, like we've already established earlier, ever since in not only in June, but also September respectively. So anyways, let's get rid of this guy right here so we can able to continue our progression here. So, I believe something tells me, though, is about the fact that once we get to, I would say, in Stage 3 and Stage 5, that we can able to actually go into certain alternative pathways for the sake of the forms of, for Eric. So, that's at least we can able to actually show off some different alternative pathways as Eric. So, anyways, though, so yeah, a few things I want to explain for that particular topic at this point is that, potentially speaking though, happy 23rd anniversary of the game console's release of the PlayStation 2. So yeah, I can't even believe the PlayStation 2 has been out for 23 years. So, ever since in the millennium year, in the 2000. So, pretty interesting, especially concerning for the fact that that was actually the first ever video game system to allow you to able to play DVDs, which is actually a pretty cool thing back then, especially concerning that every nowadays for PlayStation 3, 4, and 5, they can now able to actually access to Blu-ray discs, alongside with Ultra HD Blu-ray discs as well, specifically for the PlayStation 5. And relatively speaking though, I've noticed a lot of people are now keep on utilizing not only the PlayStation 4, but also PlayStation 5, so you can able to actually play both DVDs and Blu-rays on PlayStation 4, and in some cases on PlayStation 5. You can play like all three medias, which are DVDs, Blu-rays, and Ultra HD Blu-rays. So yeah, that's as far as I can usually describe about any of those stuff. And also the PS2 still is without a doubt the best-selling video game consoles of all time. Well, so far anyway, because I know for the fact that the Nintendo Switch is almost caught up for the sake of the forms of the #1 spot. So, I mean, relatively speaking though, who knows? Because obviously we've only just got about a couple of months left until... Actually, kind of think about it, we've only just got about quite a few days left now until we found out with the forms of certain Nintendo Switch sales records. I suppose that maybe that Sonic were able to actually mention more about it if he decides to able to go back onto the forms of Sonic Frontiers at some point. So, but even then, hopefully by that time he'll able to actually mention about that stuff. So, also I just realized about the fact that, well, I believe they'll decided able to realize that, relatively speaking though, recently in Europe, that basically Super Mario Bros. Wonder is actually now being confirmed as a, well, the best-selling Mario game in Europe. So yeah, that's actually pretty cool. So, but unfortunately though, is about the fact that we're never going to be able to actually hear about it until specifically in the next couple of days' time, or to be more specifically, maybe at some point in February next year for its Nintendo Switch sales numbers. But then again, no, we'll have to wait and find out. So, also I just realized is that this boss's name, by the way, as we're going to be fighting right now, this guy was Golem. So, yeah, I guess that's a little bit of more of a sensible thing to able to actually notice this boss's name was actually Golem. So, because, you know, he's big and everything, so, yeah, I guess that pretty much summed up as such when it comes to not knowing about the fact that with certain boss names like this, that I did somehow manage to able to found out for the sake of the false staff credit sequence, as we probably already expect. So, anyways though, there's also another thing I want to discuss upon as well, is that I surprisingly forgot to comment on back in the forms of in yesterday's video or something like that, or perhaps even maybe that Luigi has totally forgotten to mention about this either during the course of in Luigi's Mansion playthrough, is that recently Five Nights at Freddy's the movie has recently came out just recently, and unfortunately though is about the fact that the review scores, specifically for critics, it seems gone all pretty bad once again. So as a result, I just have no idea why they decided able to actually just to like give the actual film the actual low review scores. Likely about the fact that I think it actually receives lower than 30%. So at least that's not a good sign, at least as far as I'm assuming so anyway. Although mind you about the fact I've never actually played any of those Five Nights at Freddy's games for myself. Well, I definitely heard about them, but it's just no matter what though, I just felt so sorry about the forms of how that film actually receives. So, but I digress. So now we're going to be heading back to Italy once again, except now we're going to be playing as Eric Lecarde, and this is going to be the first stage that we're about to be able to come across into an alternative pathway. Specifically, once we get to the fourth segment, then I'm sure you probably already know what to expect, or perhaps even maybe the third segment actually, because relatively speaking, it's been about quite a few hours ago since I actually have last played this, because obviously still playing through all sorts of stuff here and there. To be more specifically, when it comes to the forms of Super Mario Bros. Wonder and Sonic Superstars, just before the final two Nintendo Switch games I was really hyped about. So, and also I just realized I've managed able to actually got myself the next wave for the Super Mario Bros. Wonder Switch icons for my home menu, which as a result, it does look pretty cool to me though, especially concerning for the fact that, well, I will say that I'm very, very impressed of Super Mario Bros. Wonder so far, especially it's all entirely new and everything, rather than just bringing ourselves a lot of rehashed ideas here and there based off from the new Super Mario Bros. Games. But anyways, so this is a prime example right here as far as alternative pathways we can able to go into. So as a result, we can now able to use the super jump as soon as we're able to realize that if you keep on going to the right on the lower segment, basically it just takes you into the John Morris' segments that you have to utilize the whip, and basically we don't need to worry about the whip parts for the sake of the forms of Eric Lecarde. And there's also another stage that we will be able to actually find the alternative pathway until stage 5. So, specifically when if we go into France. So, anyways though, so there's also another thing I should probably talk about this as well, is potentially speaking though, is that there's also another game that just recently been confirmed for its anniversary department, and this time what appears to be a Tony Hawk game, whatever I found out anyway. That's what appears to be Tony Hawk's Underground. So, yeah, happy 20th anniversary of the game's release of Tony Hawk's Underground. So as a result, it did originally came out on the Nintendo GameCube, PlayStation 2, Xbox, and Game Boy Advance. So, yeah, pretty cool to able to actually celebrate that game. So, oh, and also another thing I want to able to address something about this as well, is that out of nowhere, what I did manage to able to found out is that Sonic Origins Plus has recently received a patch update. Specifically, something related to Tails is no longer afraid of Labyrinth Zone. I think something tells me is about the fact that just before that patch usually becomes a thing, what happens was, if you play as Tails in Junior forms within Labyrinth Zone, I believe at one point the game do crash. So because of that though, at least that thankfully though, we're now on to version 2.0.2 from that patch update for Sonic Origins Plus, if I'm assuming so. Jeez. That death man. Jeez, that's what the actual death animation looks like if you somehow die as Eric. So, apparently though, the spirit just kills him, and jeez, it's actually gonna get dark. Way more darker than I was expecting. But, anyway though, so at the very least though, they at least managed able to address another fixed problem that we have from the likes of the forms of Sonic Origins so far. So, at least that's that. At least, potentially speaking though, it's almost gonna be, fully completed when it comes to, like, patches or something. Well, mind you, no matter what though, it's about the fact that, again, it's been about, quite a few months ago since I actually have last played, Sonic Origins Plus, mainly because I'm still expecting to be waiting for able to actually try out Super Mario RPG until likely or so 20 days time. So, yeah, everything else will be pretty much expected, so... Anyways though, There's also another thing I want to address something about this as well, is that, potentially speaking though, Disney's Dreamlight Valley is going to be leaving the early access in December, which as a result, and there's going to be another expansion pass, but this time what appears to be by the forms of a raft in time. So, yeah, that's something I suppose. Mind you, I haven't exactly brought that game out to be quite honest here, mainly because I'm still basically saving up for not just by the forms of our American vacation specifically until next year, so we can able to experience the Super Nintendo world for ourselves, but it's also with some more Nintendo Switch titles will be coming out for the sake of next year for, you know, Luigi's Mansion 2 HD, Mario vs. Donkey Kong Remake, and I don't feel like I was gonna able to repeat that process again, so here we go, we've made it again with Gargoyle once again, so hopefully it should be a lot more easier this time around, because if you're trying to able to stand on foot with Eric's spear, they can able to actually just thrust the actual spear upwards. So, or there might be a couple of times though is about the fact that you still need to be very careful when it comes to able to get hit by the forms of certain projectiles from the likes of that gargoyle, because if you dare fall off, that counts to death. So, but regardless of such though, I really wish if I was trying to able to like actually access to level 4, you know, spear upgrade, so just in case we can able to kill him faster, but that does not seem likely just yet, until specifically whenever we get towards the very end. So, but I'm sure the ending might look a bit different compared to the forms of how it does it for John Morris, to be more specifically with all that particular script and everything. So either way, there goes stage 3, and also there goes Gargoyle, until whenever we meet up with him for presumably for the final time, once we're able to take care of the forms of death. So, man, I always loved able to do a super jump whenever I was trying to able to obtain the red orb, because it was kind of satisfying, I have to be quite frank here, so. Anyway, so we're about to go into stage 4 now, so we're about to be heading back onto Germany, into the factory site, so. And as it looks like, we are now onto the halfway point in terms of Eric's playthrough for the sake of the forms of Castlevania Bloodlines. So, and once we're done with the forms of the second playthrough of Castlevania Bloodlines, I think that'll basically be good to go for the sake of the forms of this entire, you know, Castlevania series of Let's Plays for this year so far. And I'm gonna say, I had a lot of fun with those so far. At least, I will admit though right away. I would say that Silver was incredibly disappointed with the second game, just because of all its different structure. But regardless of such though, he did still manage to go into the game quite comfortably. Well, besides with the forms of some tedium involved with all that day and night system. And also that I feel like that Sonic did somehow manage to get a lot of like difficulty curves for quite some time after the events of experiencing not only currently for the Final Horizon DLC update for Sonic Frontiers, but also after experiencing playing through Castlevania 3 Dracula's Curse, and my god, for his perspective, that gee, the difficulty is a bit too much in Castlevania 3 Dracula's Curse, although he was expecting to able to try to activate the help me code in order to able to give him 10 lives instead of 3, but unfortunately though, that particular code seems able to give him a lot of struggles at points, so, but either way, that's as far as I can usually try to able to describe about the forms of the entire retrospective for the sake of the forms of the good old Castlevania stuff. I will say the only highlights for the Castlevania stuff as of now, which are, I would say Super Castlevania 4 is definitely one of the greatest games ever, and on top of that, I will say Castlevania Bloodlines is also a very good game as well, despite controls is the main factor. And in addition to that, the original Castlevania 1, despite it's pretty short, and it's also very difficult as well, but regardless of such though, it was quite a good experience, despite there might be a couple of frustration stuff here and there, so. And yeah, as you probably already saw, that I have to utilize the super jump in order to able to actually go through those little pistons, as you can tell, because obviously some things worth noting for those pistons, if they decide to crush me, it will just give me a instant death. So yeah, that's something worth watch out for. So, oh, another thing I want to mention about this as well it looks like we actually got ourselves the actual release date. Not just the release date, but potentially speaking, some more sneak peek previews for the upcoming 6th chapter, or chapter 6, for the Sacred Deforms of My Little Pony Make Your Mark. But I'm still curious to check it out, especially concerning for the fact that, well, despite I'm still not a big fan of Generation 5 for My Little Pony, mainly because of one thing: they did somehow retcon the actual story arc from the continuation portions for G4, because I still classify for saying that G4 still is the best, probably because the story arc and also certain adventures feels a lot more interesting. I mean, I'm still curious to check it out once that particular chapter comes out, but I think my expectations might be felt a little bit of a mid for me. So, but still, regardless of such though, it's about the fact that I believe the actual release date for it is about to be releasing at some point on the 23rd of November, roughly around the time where basically, I would say My Little Pony Friendship is Magic Season 4 will eventually become 10-year anniversary during that time. So, yeah, that seems kind of interesting to say the least, and maybe potentially speaking though, we might able to actually hear about the forms of that particular special, which appears to be by the forms of Secrets of Starlight. But again, that particular topic can wait, and maybe potentially alongside with that, maybe they're able to actually announce the actual release date and a final confirmation about the forms of Wave 6 for Mario Kart 8 Deluxe at some point, because still, the actual timing for the actual releases between both My Little Pony Make Your Mark chapters alongside with the forms of Mario Kart 8 Deluxe Booster Course Pass, it seems kind of weird. They obviously keep on releasing the exactly same time as each other, so I mean, I have no complaints or anything. It's just about the fact that it seems kind of weird able to actually release both of those things roughly around closer for the time. So anyway, so oh boy, this is where things gets a little bit tricky, especially as you can tell that I somehow died from that particular spinning blade, which I do apologize for that particular little captions or anything else like that. Just keeps on like messing up with my words. Like, I did say that specific word from earlier, but for some reason they just censored that, which I have no idea what causing it to happen, mainly because it's all random regenerated for or auto regenerated for the sake of defaults of my captions. So, but regardless of such though, it's about the fact that I was able to ignore that for now. So oh boy, let's go ahead and take down those specific, not only certain bats, but also certain skeletons as well. I will say, certain bats for certain sections can obviously throw me off guard at one point, but it's nowhere near as bad compared to the forms of how it does it from those Medusa heads from the likes of one of those sections in stage 6 until likely towards the very end, because of that vision gets a bit distorted. So yeah, that's as far as I can usually just try to able to talk about that. So, and I can't even believe by saying this, it's about the fact that we've only just got about 4 more days to go until we're moving on to November. So because of that, time just goes pretty fast as far as I'm usually concerned for this point. So, I mean, you know what they say, that basically though, yeah, speed is by, and, well, I just cannot figure out the actual lyrics from the likes of the forms of Sonic SAT.am for quite some time, especially concerning for the fact that I still find it a bit baffling about the fact that they've only got 2 seasons for the sake of the forms of Sonic SAT.am, and somehow the 3rd season was cancelled, and I think the reason why is because of Power Rangers. So, well, that's what I found out anyway. So because of that, yeah, it's kind of unfortunate that the 3rd season just never happened, which as a result, we did somehow manage to able to get pretty hyped about it. Well, despite the fact that I haven't exactly watched the show, at least ever since whenever I saw certain clips on YouTube. But regardless of such though, it still is a masterpiece when it comes to a Sonic cartoon series as far as I'm concerned. Although relatively speaking though, it's about the fact that, at least potentially speaking though, it's just about the fact I can't even believe Power Rangers did somehow manage to able to take over for the actual time slots, for likely also because of how the fact that how popular it was. So anyways though, so it looks like about the fact that we meet again with this particular fight right here, and yes, it does have its name by the way, and its name was Gear Steamer. So yeah, it seems kind of weird for a name of a boss, but regardless of such though, still, it does remind me of the exactly the same sprite animation as Vector Man from the Vector Man games, despite the fact that Vector Man only has 2 games. So, super jump for the win! Man, I love doing that. Especially, it kind of reminds me like I was trying to pull off a backflip jump from the likes of it, not only Super Mario 64, but also with Super Mario 64 DS, Super Mario Sunshine, and maybe it's also Super Mario Galaxy and Super Mario Galaxy 2, and even with Super Mario Odyssey, and even Bowser's Fury, whenever you're trying to able to obtain the Plasma Guffins. Well, I don't usually count Super Mario 3D Land and 3D World, because obviously you need to find the flagpole in order to able to actually finish the level, but regardless of everything else though, that's as far as I can usually try to describe it, so... But, yeah, regardless of everything else, though, I think that's as far as we can able to talk about for the forms of today's discussion. Although, relatively speaking, though, at some form or another, that obviously the Autumn Tour for the Mario Kart Tour is going to be on its way. And relatively speaking, though, is about the fact that the amount of content we're about to be getting, I think I pretty much already all set when it comes to, like, well, I've already obtained Pauline in addition with Mario Sunshine outfit, so I'm basically all good to go. Well, apart from a couple of exceptions though, mind you, likely also for one of those Mii racing suits I still haven't obtained yet, although mind you about the fact that I'm still a little bit baffled about the fact that we are still playing Mario Kart Tour for the time being, whilst we're still waiting for Wave 6. Although, hopefully by that time until in 2024, hopefully we don't need to worry about the forms of that particular impatience at one point when it comes to likely keep playing Mario Kart Tour a lot of times before we wait until that particular DLC is about to be arriving. I mean, we still have no idea when that's going to be releasing, so... I mean, yeah, it makes sense because it'll take some bit of time to able to do a graphics powerhouse, but still, I'm just really looking forward to able to actually fully 100%ing everything for, you know, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, for, you know what I'm saying, Nintendo Switch and stuff, so... Anyway, so let's go ahead and watch out for those chandeliers from above, because you never know that you might as well able to get hit for certain occasions, but as long as you were able to actually pay attention to the forms of the shiny mirror reflections or the shining window reflections, then you should be alright and such, so... But relatively speaking, that was about the fact that I will say the hardest section in Stage 5 to me, though, it has to be something to do with the actual bone pillars, because... Well, relatively speaking though, because sometimes these little, like, ghost faces did somehow manage to able to show up for certain picture frames and stuff like that. I mean, sure, it might be felt a bit tricky in some scenarios, but still. But I've noticed from the start though, is about the fact that when it comes to after Autumn Tour, we're about to be able to coming back onto not only the Animal Tour or an Animal Tour, but unfortunately though, we're about to be going back onto the Team Rally Tour system ever since in June, except this time it's going to be the repeated rerun. So it looks like unfortunately though, we're about to go back onto Peach vs Bowser Tour, which, well, I'm going to be quite frank here, I think that particular tour I'm actually going to be skipping on, because I'm not a big fan of that particular tour concept, because although it's okay in execution, but it's just that, well, ultimately though, it seems kind of pointless to me, because, relatively speaking though, you know exactly what I was about to say, that because I'm about to get some very stupid bad luck, for likely or so if we're able to actually play those godforsaken Team Rally tours and all that stuff. Oh, and by the way, in this room, if you couldn't tell, if you go onto, likely on the right, it obviously takes you to the, you know, John Morris segment that you have to utilize the whip with, although you can able to actually come across into certain enemies that you have to dodge some bombs, and maybe there are a few rare occasional moments that it does give you pot roast, so, but unfortunately though, I don't think it's possible for me to able to find the pot roast for this particular section, if you couldn't tell already, so naturally speaking, we're now on to the different alternative segments. So, usually relatively speaking though, I think we now ended up on the rooftops, so, oh yeah, because remember that particular spiral staircase segment as we've already stumbled across into in John Morris's playthrough, so now something tells me is about the fact that we're about to go downwards. So, usually for, you know what I'm saying, with John Morris, we have to go up, whilst for Eric, Lecarde, basically though we have to go down. So I guess that's a pretty interesting take for the sake of the forms of the alternative pathways to go into. So yeah, that's what I can really think about it. So either way, let's just go and go down to this spiral staircase segment. And oh wow, that was actually super quick and everything. So at least potentially speaking though, is that hopefully though, this particular playthrough doesn't take nearly as long as the forms of how it does it for John Morris. Well, right when I say that, well, sometimes though it's about the fact that you never know of what's to be coming. So although originally though, I was expecting to try and able to mentioning about something related to the forms of the Treehouse of Horror episodes for The Simpsons during the forms of today, but it's probably best for me if I decide to let Luigi decide able to mention about that particular stuff once he's gone close towards the end of Luigi's Mansion, so it'll make a little bit more sense for that regard. So, and if you couldn't tell, that's I would say that was my third death so far for the likes of Eric's playthrough, but that's mainly because I think it's entirely impossible to able to actually make you for this room with only 1 unit of health left. So, but that's sure it's something, I suppose. So anyways though, so let's just go in and try to able to actually deal with certain enemies, and at least potentially with those armor enemies, as you can tell, they somehow managed to carry the mallets, or specifically the hammer. I think those guys are pretty easy to take them on. Well, compared to this guy, sometimes it can be unpredictable if you're not paying attention to the surroundings, but I will say though, is about the fact that, well, usually relatively speaking though, is the hardest set of enemies, I have to admit it though right away, is these Medusa heads. I feel like that those Medusa heads are a bit of a pain to deal with. So alright, so here we go with this particular pillow fight once again, so we can potentially try to make things a little bit easier, because now we're able to got our boomerang with us. Although the actual boomerang itself does kind of reminds me of the forms of Holy Cross, except with a different shape, but it's almost like a very similar in function. So oh jeez, we almost gonna have to able to finish this this boss up before we move on to the next proper boss, but hey, at least we've already dished out with that anyway. So but yeah, that's as far as I can usually just to describe about certain aspects about the forms of Castlevania Bloodlines or Castlevania The New Generation. So yeah, not much else I can tell. I mean, relatively speaking though, we already on stage 5 already, so eventually we're almost approaching onto the 6th and final stage, and then that'll be about it for the sake of the forms of Castlevania Bloodlines for the Sega Mega Drive / Sega Genesis. So anyways, here we go with the actual boss fight again for the sake of the forms of stage 5, and I know it does have its name as well, and as it turns out, I somehow managed to go it wrong last time, because instead, according to the forms of the staff credit sequence, her name was Princess of Moss. So yeah, no wonder why I somehow got that wrong for the first time, especially concerning for the fact that I almost assumed that was Mothra, but actually, as it turns out, it does have a different name, like I said before. I'm guessing something is very similar to the forms of how it does it from the likes of, although I may be wrong, that usually relatively speaking though, is that if you ever played Mega Man X Legacy Collection Volume 2, that's basically though, or specifically Mega Man X Legacy Collection 2, like if you play Mega Man X5, basically certain Maverick Hunters do have their different names compared to the forms of how it does it on the original counterparts on the physical version. So although then again though, we'll talk more about the forms of Mega Man X5 if we decided able to do some more Mega Man X stuff, although we'll able to actually do Mega Man X2 until specifically next year to able to mark the 30th anniversary of the game's release of Mega Man X2 for the Super Nintendo. So anyway, stage 5 is completely done, and now we're moving on to the final stage again, except now with Eric. So here we go, we're about to be going back to England once again. So, and relatively speaking though, I don't think there's going to be alternative pathways to take, so it's just a very simple, straightforward going from like hallway to hallway, or just go from like point A to point B for certain scenarios, and hopefully I probably should able to level up my, or try to upgrade my spear, so just in case I can able to actually dish out as many of those enemies as much as I can. So at least depending on the forms of this disjointed you know what I'm saying, the section like this, for instance, because, you know, you need to able to pay attention to your feet as long as you would able to be okay. But eventually, until later on, the Medusa has decided able to distract you, so... What I thought was a little bit amusing, though, is that this game never saw a light of day on the Nintendo Wii Virtual Console re-release for some reason, which I honestly have no idea why, that this game did somehow skip over the Virtual Console lineup, which I think, relatively speaking of, what I've noticed is that you can also play this game on, let's just say, on the Nintendo Switch Online Expansion Pack for the Sega Mega Drive lineup. At least if I remember correctly. Mind you, I still haven't actually accessed the forms of the expansion pack, mind you, because I've already got most of those games cartridge physical versions, because obviously I'm perfectly gonna be fine without even to actually just wasting a bunch of cash to able to actually reschedule my subscription account. So yeah, that particular section just always throws me off at one point, especially if I get hit, I will lose my 4th upgrade, so that might be not good. That will be no good. So, but anyways, we're almost there. It's just about the fact that we need to go for a serious amount of rooms, and also we have to deal with the boss rush again, and eventually we're about to take on Death, and especially noticeable with Elizabeth Bartley, and of course, Dracula himself. So, yeah, this particular adventure is not that much of a big of a deal, besides the fact that, I will admit though right away, that I actually had a lot of fun playing as Eric, Lecarde as well. I mean, relatively speaking though, despite that it does have a similar issue as the forms of how it does it for John Morris, usually for stiff controls and everything, like, you know what I'm saying, with knockback, and especially noticeable with no mid-air controls, and especially noticeable with how the fact that, well, generally speaking, I was about the fact that I still have no idea if they would throw it back into its old style for its control scheme in mind, so... But regardless of such though, I'll explain more details about my final thoughts of the entire Castlevania Bloodlines until whenever we're able to finish up the entire game for the second time, so... And of course, keep that in mind, much like the forms of how it does it for John Morris, I'm gonna be playing through the entire game again on expert mode, so just in case, I will show you guys, you know what I'm saying, with Eric's ending, so... And relatively speaking though, this will be the final time we're gonna be fighting those, bosses, so... But, yeah, that's what I could really talk about, the forms of today's discussions for this point, and jeez, the amount of damage I somehow managed able to give them. Well, as you can tell, I somehow managed able to hit certain bosses with pretty much a devastating attack if you managed able to get level 4 upgrades for your spear or whip, depending on the forms of certain parts throughout, so... Alright, so I was originally trying to actually go ahead and try to utilize certain Death's attacks for its cards, but I'm obviously going to be able to start to be focused on the reverse order for the sake of certain bosses this time, just to ensure for the fact that it'll just give us some bit of different variety for the sake of the forms of some convenience or somewhat, so... But I digress. So, yeah, as a result, let me know in the comments down below for the bronies out there. Let me know in the comments down below for the question of the day. Are you guys expecting to be excited for My Little Pony Make Your Mark Chapter 6? Well, I'm still a little bit more optimistic, but again, like I said before, my expectations are a little bit mid for the sake of the forms of that particular chapter in mind, which, as a result, that I'm still a little bit curious to see what the story unfolds, so... Although, relatively speaking, I was about the fact I'm still not a big fan if they did somehow retcon the actual lore of G4 and such. I totally get it's an entirely different generation, but it's just that, well, they did mention about the forms of Twilight Sparkle and all that, but I just have no idea why. They somehow retconned the actual other things, so... But at least on the upside is about the fact that hopefully by that time afterwards though, maybe the 3rd season of Sonic Prime was expecting to be up until by the end of this year in particular for 2023, but we'll have to wait and see what happens. And we still have no idea whatever happened to the forms of Knuckles the series. Like, I think something tells me I believe that particular series might get delayed, probably because of the forms of, well, as you probably already know with the forms of the actor strike has been going on, so, or perhaps even maybe it might be something else? I don't know, we'll have to wait and find out, especially concerning for the fact that we're still in October, of course, so... Alright, so we have to deal with the last card, and potentially speaking... Oh wait, there was actually one more card. Okay, there we go. I sort of did not pay attention to the forms of that particular sprite thing right there, but regardless, all of those cards have pretty much done with, so... Anyway, so now let's go ahead and deal with death for the final time for this particular playthrough. And hopefully, although I will admit though right away, hitting certain, or getting certain hits for death, it feels a bit tricky at points. Although I've realized that certain attacks might look a bit familiar, especially if you ever played Super Castlevania 4 before. So, yeah, there goes death. And now we need to take on the last 2 bosses, or technically 3, or 5, to be more specifically, with all that Medusa, as well as the forms of Elizabeth Bodley, and of course Dracula with 3 different forms. So, yeah, I will say though is about the fact that this entire adventure is nowhere near as complicated as the forms of how it does it for well, at least potentially speaking though, unlike in Castlevania 3, Dracula's Curse, that Sonic needs to do multiple playthroughs for the sake of showing off some different level themes and all that stuff. I will admit though, with Castlevania 1, as well as Castlevania 2 Simon's Quest, Super Castlevania 4, and especially noticeable with Castlevania Bloodlines, is actually pretty standard for the sake of the forms of how the structure plays out to be. Although, despite the fact that we have to go through 2 playthroughs of Castlevania Bloodlines, but that's okay, because ultimately though, you're still able to actually go through a linear experience, so at the very least that's that. So anyways though, I don't suppose if you've noticed, but unfortunately though, the weather conditions has gone pretty bad again for the likes of the forms of the UK at the moment, which as a result we are about to be coming across into a lot of rain, which as to be expected because the time of the year again, it's October, so that's to be expected at this point, so... But yeah, not much else explanation, like I said before, that's mainly because I've already explained about quite a number of things here and there, especially concerning for the fact that, well, ultimately though, I'm pretty much happy as it is for the sake of the forms of what's going on at the moment, especially that I've also managed able to receive the actual subscription of the actual specific newsletter description, all about the forms of the modern Amy's costume outfit for the likes of Sonic Superstars, which I've somehow already redeemed that, so because of that, yeah, I'm pretty much fully all set for the sake of the forms of the majority of the Switch version of Sonic Superstars now, so because of that, I somehow managed able to go through everything, although then again, I'm probably not going to spoil some story details, usually relatively speaking, because obviously that game has been out for about 11 days ago now, so I mean, relatively speaking now, I found it was a little bit strange that some players managed to receive the game a lot earlier than it was originally attempted, but still, it is incredibly strange, so... But anyways, we're about to take on Elizabeth Bodley for the final time, so hopefully we should be able to deal the amount of damage to her, so... Alright, she's down to 1 last hit point, and suffice to say, I'm pretty sure I'm pretty much confident with this, so... Yeah, just only the last 2 hits on her, and boom, she's down. And jeez, that scream, man. Although then again though, I honestly have no idea why that particular sprite doesn't go completely flickered and all that stuff, which I was expecting. Oh, now it did show up for a brief second ago. Also, I just realized that the actual music theme is actually pretty similar to the forms of how it does it on Super Castlevania 4. Although, mind you, because of how the fact that this game usually came out, I would say this game came out after Rondo of Blood for the Japanese market, although that was before when technically Dracula X came out for the Super Nintendo or something. But either way though, I suppose that particular topic can wait. So, anyway, here we go again with Dracula, except this time we're now going to be taking on as Eric. So, Now, I will say, this particular fight is actually a lot easier, especially concerning about the fact that with the spear, it's actually gone to his really good reach, even if you keep your distance away from his attacks and all that stuff. But, am I still able to classify getting hit most of the time? But, I don't think it's gonna be possible, I don't think, because obviously if you utilize the spear, not only you can able to actually deal some bit of damage to Dracula, but also you can able to actually attack his projectiles, so you can able to feel a little bit more confident, and on top of that you won't be able to get hit at all. So yeah, that's basically the first phase done. So now we're going to be moving on to the second form, which is of course the wizard thing. So still, it's a pretty weird transformation now he able to actually go with this time around. So because unlike in Castlevania 3, that he turns into himself like a reference to a Pokemon, like the also for Demonic Execute, or something like that. And usually in the third and final form, in Castlevania 3, he turns into its giant man-bird. But in here though, it's this weird demon monster, so... But regardless of such though, here we go on to the true final boss, and that was basically all there was to it. Despite the fact that I unfortunately lost my fourth upgrade for my spear, but that's okay for me, because obviously I could potentially try to able to do exactly the same strat as before, except I can able to do this. So, just to deal with the insane amount of hits on Dracula's third form, although except when he's getting close to dying, obviously he's now going to go into likely jumping phase. So, which still, the jumping segment is actually ridiculously easy to deal with, but you have to watch out for those bones, because if you get hit by bones a lot, well, assuming of course if you somehow die, you have to redo the entire fight again. So, and there goes Dracula. So because of that, that was it. That was the end of Castlevania Bloodlines, aka Castlevania A New Generation, or in Japan, Vampire Killer. So, yeah, quite of a journey. Especially that thankfully we don't need to worry about multitude of playthroughs, especially unlike in Castlevania 3, that jeez, Sonic needs to go for a lot of tedium involved. So, there we go, we got the final orb once again, except, well, as Eric. So, let's enjoy the ending of Castlevania Bloodlines as Eric Lecarde. Although you still see the castle crumbles and all that stuff, except the text is gonna get a lot different. So, relatively speaking though, that's what I can really say about it. So, I apologize for that particular awkward commentary, because there's gonna be a lag going on in my computer, so I do apologize for that. Thus, Eric has fulfilled his destiny as a vampire hunter. Now he must venture forth into greater unknowns. I will admit though, the animation work does feel pretty nice as far as for that particular shot. But regardless of such though, yeah, let's talk about my final thoughts of Castlevania Bloodlines for the Sega Mega Drive / Sega Genesis. I actually will admit though, I was very impressed about this game. Sure, it's not perfect, I mean, sure it's a great game in its own right. The levels are exciting to see, and I will say the bosses are pretty interesting, and on top of that, the soundtrack and the visuals look amazing. Although I will say it's about the fact that, well, the only downside about this game though, to me though, is that despite this game is actually super duper short, but I must say though, is that the controls is probably the weakest part, because I just have no idea why they refer back into the old style controls, which, until by that time, until when it gets to the point until Castlevania Rondo of Blood, then we should be able to actually make a controls, well, not perfect, but a great one regardless. So, yeah, that's all there is to really think about it. You should definitely recommend trying out Castlevania Bloodlines. It's now available for the likes of not only for the Castlevania Anniversary Collection, but it's also on the Sega Mega Drive Mini, specifically the first model, because I don't think it's possible you can able to come across into this game on the second model. But relatively speaking though, there's also now available for the Nintendo Switch Online expansion pack as well. So, at the very least, there is actually like multiple options you can able to actually play this game every now and then. So, oh, and by the way, if you see the credit sequence on expert mode, you get yourselves a special message as well. Although if you beat the game on normal mode, it did say try expert mode. I'm not exactly sure what happens if you beat the game on easy mode, aside from skipping the entire castle crumble completely, which I'll admit though, that was pretty lame if you managed able to beat the game on easy mode. But for normal mode, it just cut short, likely also after that particular text. But that's about it basically. So yeah, I should probably able to actually recommend playing Castlevania Bloodlines. It might be pretty tricky in some scenarios, especially noticeable because like I said before, this game does have limited amount of continues, and if you use it all up, you have to go all the way back to the beginning. Well, there might be a password feature if you try to sort out the infinite amount of continues, or unlimited amount of continues, but I can't be bothered to try that out. So, yeah, that concludes our Let's Play of Castlevania Bloodlines. So this is me, Ray the Flying Squirrel, and until then, I will see you guys at some point whenever we decide to do some more Let's Plays for November and all that stuff. So, I can't tell you exactly what it was though, so either way, I'll let you guys know. So I'll see you guys until soon. Bye!